We must merge our monetary system with those of other nations, eventually to form a world currency. We must willingly submit all international disputes to a world Supreme Court and abide by those decisions regardless of the outcome. And above all, we must turn over our most powerful weapons and even our armies to international control, so that the new world government will possess sufficient military might to compel the various political subdivisions by force, if necessary, to comply with the dictates of its laws and the decrees of its court.
The food crisis on inflation will be, according to the National Institute of whatever it is, will be the top crisis in 2011. According to them, we can see prices as high for 1 ear of corn, $11.43. 1 ear of corn. $23.05 for a 24-ounce loaf of wheat bread. This, $62.21, 32-ounce packaged granulated sugar, Domino's. Milk, try this out for size. Hey, Mom, only $24.31 for a Minute Maid orange juice, $45.71. I had to check this one because I couldn't believe it. This is 1.55 ounces. For 1.55 ounce of Hershey's milk chocolate, they say this could cost as much as $15.50. Welcome to your future of monetizing the debt.
Starting to say, wait a minute, guys, we're not going to continue to finance this. We're not going to continue to play ball. Other countries are now looking for replacements for the U.S. dollar. There's a lot of movement, not just in China, but all over the world, because everybody knows that the U.S. dollar is now a terribly flawed currency. The United States is trying to drive down the value of its currency. No country in history that's had a policy of debasing its own currency has done very well in the long term or even the medium term. It sometimes works in the short term that you can revive your economy by devaluing your own money, but that's not a good policy.
For spending. He has presented a budget to the United States. He has laid out the pathway for the next 10 years. I repeat, there's $46 trillion in spending in the president's budget over the next 10 years, and it grows the public debt of the United States by $12 trillion. That is to say, even over the next decade, using very rosy, optimistic projections of economic growth, they're projecting, for example, economic growth next year of 4.5%. Most economists are saying we'll be lucky to get 3 or 3.5% at the most. But the president has rosy economic projections, and even then, we add $12 trillion to the public debt of the United States. The president just, you know, he just doesn't get it.
Would you not agree that that is a stunning figure, perhaps the fastest growing item in it, and all of that is a direct result of the debt we're running up and only a modest expectation of interest rate increases?
Senator, absolutely. It is a excessively high interest burden. It's unsustainable.
Well, it's your plan for the 10 years. I mean, that's the one the president has submitted. But that's what he's asked us to vote on. It will result, and that's your numbers off your budget.
Senator, you're absolutely right that with the president's plan, even if Congress were to enact it, and even if Congress were to hold to it and reduce those deficits to 3% of GDP over the next 5 years, we would still be left with a very large interest burden and unsustainable obligations over time. That's why we're having the debate. I completely agree with you. But the question, though, is, just to be direct about it, what's the alternative plan? And again, the way our system works, this is a good thing. You're going to see, we'll be able to see from the House, we'll be able to see from this body, whether people can find the political will here to go deeper. And if you can find it.
But what your plan is that plan. It's the one you're required by law to submit, and that's what you call for, and it's not acceptable. I'm sorry. It's a plan not for winning the future, but losing the future.
Our existence to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Here are the aims for the United States. 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied, naturally and automatically, by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace. Peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world and of the United States itself.